Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Jordan J and Buddies podcast. I'm your host, Will, and we're doing something a little different here. I am here with Brannon, as usual.
Hey, buddy.
So we are doing something a little different. We aren't talking about a movie specifically or anything. We're bringing a discussion that we've had in real life. We're bringing it to you guys. We're bringing it to the podcasting sphere because...
It's come up multiple times.
It's come up multiple times with both people making some points and not backing down from them.
And every time it's come up, more and more points keep coming up. More and more elaborations keep coming up. Where eventually I was like, you know what, Will? You and Jordan have this podcast. We keep bringing this up. It's in the realm of movies, TV, stuff like that, but it's different. Let's do it. And
so, yeah, because me and Jordan have had some little one-off things on here before. And so the discussion here, this all came about. There was one point where myself and our good buddy Jake were talking, and we said something akin to, yeah, but the best Spider-Man movie has to be Into the Spider-Verse. And Brandon's immediate response to that was...
No, it's not. Raimi's Spider-Man 2 and Far From Home both blow that out of the water.
And at first we were like, okay, well, fair enough. If you want to say that, then sure. But his argument then became... I don't care.
Compare live action to animated.
Yeah, you can't compare live action to animated, and I think you can.
Yeah,
because they're both movies.
And again, let me preface this by saying this argument has expanded way past comparing the two Spider-Man movies. So we're gonna have a lot of different references. That's gonna be one of them that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have a lot of them, and that's gonna be the main one that comes up. So if you wonder why are they talking about Spider-Man a lot and this isn't a Spider-Man thing, we're gonna have other examples. It's just this is how it started. And I'm not saying Into the Spider-Verse is a bad movie. I think it's an amazing movie. I think it's a great Spider-Man movie. But I don't think it's in the same comparable league as live action films. Or if it is, it doesn't make sense to compare it because it's from a different structure. And so we've gotten into this debate. Will?
Because I think you can. I simply think that you can because they're movies. You can compare anything. And I think that they are comparable because they're both Spider-Man movies. And I can say that this is the best Spider-Man movie simply because I think that the plot of this one wins against the plots of some of the other movies.
No.
If you want to say they serve as different narratives, then okay. But I think that this movie has the best plot and thus is the best.
No. Absolutely.
And thus can
imagine
be
the Bugs Bunny meme. No.
And thus can be compared.
I don't think so. I think, and I've said this time and time again, so obviously the question at this point, I don't think we explicitly said it. Do you think animated movies are comparable to live action movies?
Right.
Just because we want other people's opinions that listen. So we got to actually say that because we're going to be talking about it and it's kind of obvious at this point, but we're asking you guys too. Do you personally think live action can compare to animated, or do you think they're in their own spheres? Because me and Will agree when it comes to animated stuff, it's wrong to just put everything under animated.
Yes.
There should be animated drama, animated action, animated comedy.
Yeah, you will see these things in Oscar nominations and stuff, and this is just kind of a tangent here, but this explains kind of where this came from a little bit too, is that you'll see these things in the Oscar world and stuff, where they'll have just best, you got all the classic genres. You got horror, you got sci-fi, you got comedy, you got drama, and you got animated. Animated should not be its own drama. Should not be its own genre.
It should not drama. It is this episode.
It should not be its own genre because there are classifications within animation that are various genres. You have animated comedies. You have animated superhero movies. You have animated dramas. You have animated things for kids because to lump everything that is animated in together
is wrong.
Is not fair. Because as I said this about TV shows, but it still serves as the same idea. To put all animation under one bubble compares Avatar to Caillou to SpongeBob to Family Guy to
Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
To
Bob's
we were
Burgers.
On the same page then. That was crazy.
To JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to Dora the Explorer. They are all animated.
To Meat Canyon.
So they're all the same.
Go look at that one. That's a deep cut.
So they're all the same. They're all animated. They're all the animated genre, and they're all comparable. No, they're not. Because it is merely a storytelling medium.
Yes.
And as such, I believe that you could compare animated dramas to real life dramas.
See, and that's where we differ.
And there's a difference.
And this is where it's funny because we came up with the Spider-Man stuff, but then when we came up with it later at this point, this is where we came up to the basic origin of it, to where we agree, yes, animated stuff should not just be, hey, it's animated versus all this other stuff. I agree. There's animated comedy, animated drama, animated horror, all of this stuff, definitely. But my argument is, if you're going to specify that, doesn't that also kind of play into the fact that it's its own medium on stuff? Because, yeah, it compares with live action stuff to an extent that it has its own categories like live action does. But you cannot compare live action to animated because they are still overall in their own branches. You still have a live action branch of live action drama, live action comedy, live action horror, all this stuff. And you still have an overall branch of animated comedy, animated drama, animated horror, because they are not comparable in every way. They're different structures. It's like comparing apples to oranges. And Will likes to pull
Why
off,
can't fruit be compared?
Yeah, exactly. Will likes to pull off the little smart comment, why can't fruit be compared? That's not what the saying means. The saying comparing apples to oranges. No.
You talked for 30 seconds.
No, you are letting me speak on this. I am getting my rant out. I don't care if it takes 2 to 3 minutes. I'm getting this out before I lose my train of thought, because you know I do that.
Fair enough.
So, apples to oranges, that's not what it means. It means you can, if you're comparing those two fruits, it's not an accurate comparison, so they are therefore incomparable because they are coming from different structures. You can compare like oranges to grapefruits or oranges to lemons or oranges to limes. Why? Because they're both citrus. They're both in the same family. They're both in the same branch overall that come from the same structure, and therefore they have comparisons because they have differences, but they are still comparable. But they are not comparable to apples because apples have their own stuff. They have Gala, they have Honeycrisp, they have all these other stuff. Yeah, I know a lot of fruit. I like fruit. I like vegetables too. I eat healthy. But still, point being, there's a lot of differences, but they're in their overall arching stuff that are therefore incomparable. If you're going to compare them, if they're comparable, then they don't make sense to compare them.
I understand the metaphor. I get my oranges.
I just gotta break it down because it doesn't seem like you. I don't think you do.
I get my apples to oranges stand as a metaphor, and I understand what it means.
Just had to explain it.
The whole metaphor means you can't compare two things that are unlike. But I don't think these two things are unlike.
They are, though!
I don't think they are, because they're both in the same... They are both telling stories. And it is as simple as that.
Okay, I'm gonna break this down, all right? And I know that you have your comparison on this too, so I'm gonna let you take the floor for a second before I refute it on why I make this example, because I'll let you go off on it right away, because we were talking about this a little earlier. I said, instead of using, oh, it's like comparing apples to oranges, let's use a different one, okay? I said it's like comparing Mountain Dew to a 12-hour smoked rib and asking which one is better. And Will said, that's not an accurate comparison. And I said, why? And he said, because those aren't the same thing. And I'm like, why? They're both being consumed just like movies are being consumed overall, but they're two different things. Aren't you saying that? They all wind up going to the same thing. You both indulge in the same stuff, but they're different things. And he's like, well, they're not the same thing though. I think it's more like...
Well, no, because I think that to say Mountain Dew to prime rib or whatever the exact metaphor is not fair. I think that, to compare a drinkable to an edible,
they're both being consumed.
I think
they're both being consumed. It's like comparing a movie to a movie.
You said you would let me talk.
I know. I know. I just like interrupting you sometimes.
I don't like you interrupting me.
But
hilarious. I think that to compare Mountain Dew to say that the comparison is Mountain Dew to something that you eat would be, because they're both being consumed. They're both being interpreted and digested by you, is to compare movies to music.
Nope.
That is the genre.
Nope.
Because this is two totally different things.
Nope.
You asked me to not talk over you, and I did not.
Hey, I'm listening. I'm just saying no in between. I'm not changing your point. I'm not trying to take over.
But so I think that that's what it is. And so then to compare animation to live action is to compare one soda to another.
I don't.
And to compare one Spider-Man movie to another, even if it's live action or not, is to compare kinds of Mountain Dew. This is Voltage to Code Red. This is Major Melon to Classic. This is whatever. And I can talk that all day.
Nope. Here's how I'm going to break it down for you on that, Because I've been thinking on this, and this is exactly where I find the loopholes on stuff. If you're going to say that comparing Raimi's Spider-Man, the overall Spider-Man universe, right? Raimi's universe to Garfield's universe is like comparing Voltage to Code Red, right?
Yeah.
Then what do you say when you compare Raimi's 1 to Raimi's 2? What is that in the metaphor?
It's just the next can. It's just the next can in the box.
It's not the same, though. No, it's not the same because it's the same Spider-Man.
We're talking about the universe, though. That's the whole thing, is that we are talking in a slightly grander scale about the universe. If you want to break down each individual movie, then that's slightly a different conversation. It's under the same director with the same writing, the same kind of effects.
But that's my point, is they're still comparable. That's the ultimate form of comparison, compared to where live action you cannot compare to animated. The reason why I say it's Mountain Dew versus a prime rib, breaking it down, is they're both consumable. They're both going into your stomach, the same form of stuff, therefore they are both movies in this metaphor. Because for your stuff, comparing movies to music would be comparing, like, okay, so what do you like better? Do you think it's better to I don't even know, take a shot of alcohol? Or do you think it's better to, I don't even know a good comparison, you know? Like, I don't have one for that.
Because mine was the best.
You know? Yeah, exactly. Like, so I don't have one on that. But my thing is the reason why I say Mountain Dew to the prime rib is because when you break it down, you have the Mountain Dew itself, right? Mountain Dew is Spider-Man, okay? In this metaphor, right? Then you have Raimi's universe, or let's just say in general, soda is Spider-Man. Not even Mountain Dew is Spider-Man. Yeah. Soda is Spider-Man, okay?
Okay.
And then Mountain Dew is one form. It's
Mountain Dew is
Raimi. Yeah. And then you have like Mug Root Beer is Garfield. I don't know if Garfield deserves as good as Mug Root Beer, but still. Yeah. And then you have Tom Holland is like A&W cream soda, you know? So those are all sodas. They're all comparable still because they're all sodas, right? Just like they're the 3 Spider-Men. But then you get into it from there on stuff, and you
Raimi
have...
Spider-Man 1 is classic Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Raimi Spider-Man 2 is Code Red.
Raimi Spider-Man 3 is Voltage.
Yeah.
And then same thing going on to where, I guess Mug wasn't a good example. Let's say like Pepsi or something, I guess, where you have like cherry Pepsi. You have
that's better because Pepsi, you know? Sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So, Pepsi's worse than Coke, so that's definitely a good one. Like, but you get the metaphor, though.
So the original is, Amazing Spider-Man 1 is regular Pepsi, and Amazing Spider-Man 2 is Diet Pepsi, where it's somehow worse.
So let's break this down further, though, because we're comparing live actions on this still on stuff. So it's like bringing in Miles Morales' animated stuff is like the prime rib thing because it's in its own category on stuff. It's still consumable, I guess.
I think it's a drink. It's not a soda. If soda is a live action Spider-Man,
fair, I guess.
Then Miles Morales' animated is a drink. Miles Morales is Arizona tea.
No. I guess. But you can't compare tea to soda.
I can and will all day.
Oh
Soda's better.
I don't think that it's necessarily... No. This is frustrating. I had it better set up in my head.
But the metaphor might be getting us off track.
Yeah, exactly.
So the reality of it is to take it at
let
face.
me ask you, what are your things that break down what's comparable in the movie? Because then I'll break down after a while.
Because when I compare one thing to another, I'm not just saying Into the Spider-Verse is better because it's animated. If I was saying that, then that would kind of be a BS argument. I think that it's better because of the plot. I'm also taking into account, much as you would when you watch a live action movie, you take into account the actors. I love that J.K. Simmons is in Far From Home. I love that Tom Holland portrays Spider-Man in such a unique way. So as such, that's a loud plane.
Yeah, it's a loud plane. We record this outside for now until we have a better aspect.
A better setup.
But
so I'm taking into account plot, but I'm also taking into account actors. Same way that on the animated scale, I would take into account, I love that Jake Johnson is playing Peter B. Parker. I love that Nick Cage is playing Spider-Man Noir. I love that John Mulaney is Spider-Ham.
But do you think they would have been able to play these characters if they were live action?
I don't see why not.
You think Nick Cage would have played Spider-Man Noir, bro? He's like 50.
He's been wearing a mask the whole time.
Nick Cage can still move around.
They made Josh Brolin look like a pretty convincing Thanos.
I'm more saying, can Nick Cage still function? I'm a Nick Cage fan, but can this man still actively do active scenes?
Can Josh Brolin throw a moon? It's special effects. What are you talking about? It's CGI.
In general, though, that's another thing, though, is like, okay, breaking down the plot, this is what I brought up to Jake, where he's like, okay, that's a decent point, is even with the plot, though, you have to consider the differences right off the bat. When you're coming up with an animated movie, the sky's the limit. You're creating your own world from scratch, no matter what. You are building all of the rules from the ground up, and anything you say goes. When you're considering live action, you have to consider, okay, this is gonna look realistic. So how are we gonna play this off as believable? How are we gonna ground this to reality? Even if it's the most fantastical thing, oftentimes, it still has an earthly approach to it. So you have to factor that in. So it's oftentimes live actions, even if they're more fantastical, have to be more grounded on stuff. When you compare Batman's The Killing Joke and how violent that gets versus Batman The Dark Knight, it's no contest. The Dark Knight's an amazing movie, one of the best of all time, of superhero movies of all time in general. But it's not comparable to The Killing Joke. They're two different spheres. One's animated, one's live action, and therefore animated could pull off a lot more. It gets away with a lot more. Same as the actor stuff is voice acting versus live action acting is completely different. They're in different spheres. They have different people. Yes, some people trek over on stuff, but it's the really famous people. Most people have direct spheres. You don't see Justin Roiland in live action. You don't see Phil Lamar in live action. They're voice actors. You don't see Tom Kenny in live action. They're voice actors. You see live action actors trying to transfer over to animated, like you're seeing Chris Pratt do with the new Mario movie, which I guarantee you you're gonna hear the either woohoo or the it's a me, and then you're gonna hear and then it's gonna be Chris Pratt's voice.
There's just gonna be stupid Andy Dwyer from Parks and Rec. But you know.
And I love Chris Pratt too. It's not a bash on Chris Pratt, but point being is, yeah, live action people try to trek over to animated, but oftentimes it's bashed on that. And the other question that I'm going to propose to you,
well,
if live action,
you've thrown a lot at me. Can I jump in?
Yes.
I wanted to give you some time, but before we jump on to another thing, I think that is a valid enough argument until very recently. Within the past 5, maybe 10 years, there have been such strides made in the world of making fantastical, crazy movies that are live action, in quotes, but have things like Dormammu, Thanos, Infinity Stones.
But they didn't pull them off as smoothly as they would have in animation.
Well, that's who's to say? Those looked like real. You know? They looked as realistic as weird could look, and at the end of the day, what's the difference? I think that Dormammu looked convincing as heck. What more could we want from it? You know, I think that Thanos looked like I could have walked up to him and touched him. I thought that Zack Snyder's Justice League looked like it could be happening right in front of me. So they have come such a long way with special effects where they don't look not convincing, where the sky is also the limit with live action stuff. So what's the difference?
Can I ask you a question? What's the best Justice League movie?
None of them. But anyway.
You're not going to compare any of the animated ones? There's like 4 of them.
I'll be the first to say,
come on.
I'll be honest with you, I have not seen them.
You haven't seen them. I know, but still, point being, you don't think of the animated ones. You think of the live action, because they're two different...
That's not a fair...
The point being, though, is the general population does not think of that. Same as Marvel has still come out with constant animated stuff on the side that's on the low key for stuff. People don't talk about it the same as they do live action until What If, but that's still... I even asked you earlier, what's better, Loki or What If? It's hard to compare. Want to know why? Because they're both covering multiversal stuff. They're both covering similar aspects, but it's hard to compare because they're in different vibes, because one is in animation where it's a lot less grounded than the other one is. Loki is fantastical, but it's still grounded in reality. What If's not so much grounded in reality as much as it is, hey, the reality's ours for the making. That's completely different. Also, let me ask you this.
No, because I think, first off, What If is better. And
ooh, that's a hot take.
And that's a heavy claim, because every MCU show has debatably gotten better than the one before it.
I don't think they're comparable, by the way.
But I think that What If is the better show. But it's hard because they service 2 different narratives.
They service 2 different narratives because one's animated and they don't service 2 different narratives. They service the same. They're both covering the multiverse.
It's not this. Okay, in the vague sense of they both cover the multiverse.
Oh my God, Will.
Sure.
You know your argument has a hole in it.
No, I don't think so.
Let me ask you this really quick, though, because I've been sitting on it for a while. Let me ask you this, because I haven't even asked you this in our previous conversations off microphone, whatever this thing is that I'm talking into right now is.
Right.
If live action and animated are comparable, why do people ask for live action adaptations of animated projects?
I don't think a lot of people have. A lot of people have gotten mad at Disney for these recent Lion King, Aladdin things. People don't like it. They like the animated stuff more.
People were asking. That's the point, though. Is they're not comparable?
What? That's not. That was a slippery slope. I don't even know how you got there from what I said. That's not the same point.
It is the same point, though. Is there not?
People are literally comparing them. They're literally saying, I watched the live action Lion King, and I grew up watching the animated Lion King, and the animated one's better.
But they're the same movie.
That's
the point, though. They're the same exact movie, so they're still comparable. They're not the completely rewritten Lion King versus the animated Lion King. It's the same exact Lion King being compared, so therefore it's still comparable. My point is, give me a live action movie and compare it to a completely off-brand oh, sorry.
You're fine.
Yeah, freaking Jordan, take that one out. Animated Spider-Man, animated whatever it is. Give me a movie and compare it to a live action thing that's within the same sphere, but try to compare it. You can't. You really can't. Whether again,
Star Wars. This has been my return to argument. Is there's the Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated film that came out in like 2004, 2005, 2006, something like that. No, it was after 2005. It was like 2007. But that takes place between 2 and 3. That chronicles a sneak peek or a piece of what the Clone Wars were, and it is an animated movie. It is also not that good, but that is not because it's animated. Because they have been able to do things in Star Wars movies with CGI, with special effects, with insane choreography that rival what they do in these animated series. and as such can be compared because they literally service the same narrative with the same characters. Doing the same things in the same
Clone Wars
settings.
movies are comparable to like the Phantom Menace or like A New Hope? You think
so.
they're comparable?
Yeah.
Ask the general population if they're comparable, and they're going to tell you no.
Okay,
I guarantee it.
We're talking me and you though.
We opened it to the public,
and I want to know what they think, but I can't sit here and say what John on the street thinks about this. I'm talking about me. And what I think is that they're comparable.
I don't think they are, though, because they come from different structures on stuff. I think that you can compare, like I floated the other day too, is Spider-Verse 2 comes out next year, next December. Then we'll have a comparison on it.
I think you can have that conversation as well.
Or you could compare like Into the Spider-Verse to like old animated Spider-Man projects. I'm down for it. 90s animated Spider-Man versus Miles Morales Spider-Man. That's a cool comparison. You can even compare... can you? No, I'm not going to go there. Never mind. That's a flawed... I'm not going to put a flawed argument out there. I'm confident in most of my points.
It's all right. You've only been putting out flawed arguments for 20 minutes.
I haven't, though. Because my arguments are solid. At the end of the day, you can't compare them because everything from writing of the plot to the actors that are chosen to the visuals that you see are completely different. They're a different
Nick Cage
process.
did live action stuff, and he did live action stuff as recently as like 2011 for Ghost Rider 2. I don't think that's a good movie, but he does good in it. And as such, why would that be a problem? You also have Jake Johnson, 7 seasons on New Girl. He's a live action actor who did a thing here. John Mulaney, very active, walking around, wild stand-up comedian. And
you're gonna tell me New Girl's comparable to Into the Spider-Verse, though?
Well, I'm not saying that because it's a TV show about a girl living in an apartment with 3 guys.
I know.
Is that the Miles Morales story?
No.
I'm saying
if it is, then you're watching the wrong Miles Morales.
I'm saying
Miley Morales.
My name is Miles. Okay, anyway. But I think that as such, it's not inherently... There are people who have made the living with just voice acting. People like Dan Castellaneta from The Simpsons, Billy West from Futurama, who've made their acting, their living being just that. But somebody like Seth MacFarlane has done both. So I think that to say there's people who are specific to both genres. But when he does both,
they're different vibes when he does both, though. That's my point. Even though it's Seth MacFarlane, even though it's the same Seth MacFarlane humor, it's different vibes. You're going to tell me he cracks some of the same vibes of jokes in the Orville. Not as much because Family Guy's trash in the later seasons, but like early Family Guy on stuff, he would make some smarter, intelligent jokes on stuff, or even American Dad, that you can compare to some of the stuff he puts in the Orville. Are you going to say that's comparable? No, because they're different vibes.
Because they're different shows. What? No,
one's animated, one is live action. I know, we got to stay in the same genre in order for this argument. We keep checking out.
It only makes sense with these hyper-specific examples.
Yeah, exactly. So
but as
back
such,
to the Spider-Man thing,
they can be compared when it comes up.
Even to the Spider-Man thing, though, we'll see Spider-Man 3 No Way Home is going to handle the multiverse, and I'm really excited for it. But I guarantee you they're not going to be able to go as crazy as they did in Into the Spider-Verse. Want to know why? Because they're limited. Because they're doing live action and they're in a real world setting where it has to be a lot more realistic. You can still have it on Earth like you do in Into the Spider-Verse, but have a lot more, again, just surrealness to it is a good word, you know? Like everything to it, all the way down to the way you interpret it. Psychologically, you interpret animations different than you do live action, face-to-face stuff.
But
it's
see,
just
they've been breaking new ground when it comes to what they can do with live action. Debatably, ever since Star Wars first started doing stuff like that in the 70s, and ever since then, there's been special effects just on the rise. Star Wars, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, the newer Star Wars stuff, the MCU things. All superhero movies have been breaching what you can do with that. I mean, we all saw that Spider-Man Far From Home trailer. Sorry. Oh man,
No Way Home. Jake got you.
This stupid home trilogy. Spider-Man, No Way. We're this far from Homecoming. But it's like, come on. But we all saw that trailer, and in that trailer, they fall through a hole in the city that's bending outwards, like we're in Inception. That's nuts. And as such, it is servicing a similar kind of BS, wacky time travel, multiverse insanity narrative, like we see in Into the Spider-Verse.
Did it not invoke a different feeling when you watched it, though?
I don't think so.
I do.
I don't think so.
I do.
I think that at the end of the
one
day,
had a lot more of a mind-blowing, like, whoa, like, imagine if Earth did this, versus one had a more mind-blowing, like, whoa, this is ripped straight off the comic page.
he got his pizza sucked out of his hand. Poor Peter B. Parker.
Oh.
He lost his pizza.
And again,
I was genuinely sad for that because I saw that as a real pizza. You know?
Again, oh my gosh. All pizza losses are losses in our eyes.
Oh, man.
But Into the Spider-Verse, again, it is a great movie. Like, I feel like, again, like, it's gonna get a little muddled through the entire conversation, that, like, it seems like I'm just coming off like, no, it's not good compared to the others on stuff. Like, it is good, but that's just why I don't like to compare it to the others, because when you have to compare it to the others, it falls mid-rank for me, and that doesn't feel right. It feels like it's in its own field. It feels like it is one of the best superhero movies to come out, but it's more comparable to animated superhero movies that have come out in the past. Like, I really think that's the thing. Ask me to compare The Killing Joke versus Into the Spider-Verse. I can make that comparison all day with all sorts of different points.
Okay.
You know?
That does make some sense.
But I can't compare Into the Spider-Verse to, like, Far From Home, you know? Because they both killed it. But they both, like you said, service different narratives, but it's because they were centered around completely different worlds. One was a live-action world, realistic and grounded. One was an animated world, fantastic, childlike, nostalgic, straight off more of, like, comic book fluidity, you know? Yeah. It's a lot harder to transfer something that's a comic reference to live action than it is to an animation. Animation, you could literally pull that exact image.
Yeah, that's true. But they did that a lot because, yeah, sure, we have so far, when it comes to live-action Spider-Man movies, not quite seen that. We've seen it in some similar enough things. Like there's that thing in Homecoming where he's got all the rubble on him that is practically ripped straight from the comic pages, you know?
Amazing scene, but one of the best.
When you talk about other stuff that does broach those heavy, you would think initially hard to translate comic book things, that does them really well, things like Guardians of the Galaxy, that hit new heights when it comes to doing weird stuff. You know, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, you know, Ego the Living Planet and stuff like that, where the effects look so good that they're handling outer space crap, and it looks good, you know. And that's part of it, is that they have done outlandish, fantastical things in the MCU. They just haven't done it with Spider-Man yet. This was something where they did weird stuff with Spider-Man, but we haven't seen that yet. We probably will. It's looking like we'll probably see that with this coming movie, and if not that, then soon. You know,
so that could be a point that
we've seen that in Guardians. We've seen that in Doctor Strange. We've seen it in the two newest Avengers movies, specifically Infinity War, but a little bit in Endgame too, where they did time travel stuff, and they jumped to new heights that we've never seen before, and thus achieved they could have made Infinity War beat for beat in animation, and it would have invoked and looked just as good as it did in live action, I think.
True.
And I think that is why they're comparable, is because now more than ever, live action movies can reach the heights that animated movies do.
But even then,
maybe 30 years ago, no. Maybe 50 years ago, no. You know, when you were watching animation, because also animation was also not this good a little while back.
True.
You want to talk about, oh, well, could they have done this in the 1960s? I don't know. Could you compare Dr. No, the first James Bond movie, to The Flintstones? The cartoon coming out at the same time.
True.
They did not nearly have the live action abilities for that, but also cartooning was not doing that good. It was fluent 2D stuff, but you see what I'm saying.
Well, I'll concede half a point to you, but it kind of feeds into my thing, which is why I say half a point, is because you hit it on the head. It's hard to compare them because Miles Morales and Spider-Verse and Spider-Man covered the Spider-Verse. It covered something that live action Spider-Man has not had the chance to cover. But that feeds into my argument because they've had different chances for narratives. They were able to take that dive on animation first because it's the more expected one to do it in. And then once they saw it was successful, we're like, oh, we can do this now. I guarantee you a Spider-Verse would have failed. They would have been like, we can't even touch the multiverse in live action right now. People don't want it. It was used as the experimental forum within stuff. And again, that's where we say animation is a medium. We agree there, is you can do more with it, but part of it is they haven't, I don't think they're comparable for that exact reason, is we haven't been able to see that exact narrative. Maybe down the line, that's why I say I concede half a point, because maybe the argument changes down the line after No Way Home comes out, because then you're comparing beat for beat. Okay, Spider-Verse is Miles Morales covering the multiverse, doing all this stuff. No Way Home is Peter Parker covering the multiverse, doing all of this stuff. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah, little other stuff, but it's the same general narrative on that. So yeah, I guess we're getting to that point where it could be comparable eventually, but current day, I do not think it is.
And as such, I will also concede a bit of the argument to you there as well, that there's something to be said, especially current day, for animation being the more experimental of the forums, because I think also, all things considered, and there's high budgets on both things.
Oh yeah,
but
millions, billions.
That there is less money thrown into an animated movie than there is into a live action movie, because it's, at the end of the day, it's just computer editing and computer graphic design versus casting, live action things, and the CGI that goes into it and stuff. So it's more cost effective to test out, because if an animated movie bombs, they can just walk away.
Yeah.
If a live action movie bombs, it took longer to make it, took more man hours, more manpower, and look at that, all that popped out was Venom 2. Like, you know, again, it's like,
we do that's funny. We do gotta admit though, is like, to an extent, like, live action could take longer to an extent, but I mean, animated movies take longer to write because they take longer. Like, people are drawing since day one for animated movies on stuff, you know, like, they're getting the image from start to finish. Like, animated movies take a lot longer in general to make, but as far as the overall product of like just putting it out there, having it last, everything, yeah, is they don't last as long as live action movies do, you know, is like, usually they pass off. And again, Into the Spider-Verse did have Sony's new technology, new animation technology on stuff, so maybe it was a little more expensive than some live action movies usually are for that exact reason, but that's the point that I'm conceding, is it'll be comparable eventually. But current day it's not, because one of the nostalgic things that I love in Spider-Verse is you see when Miles Morales, and I think you guys even mentioned this on your Spider-Man podcast, is
oh yes,
when Miles Morales is swinging in the trees for the first time, he's at a different frame rate per second than
he's moving,
Jake Johnson's.
He's animated twice as slow. I mean, he's as fluid, but it's like he's going at like 30 frames a second while Jake Johnson's going at 60.
But like, I feel like that gives me a different feeling than if I were to see live action Peter Parker swinging fluidly and Miles Morales swinging clunkedly behind him, you know? I feel like it'd be two different feelings. It's the same scene, but it's two different feelings because of the way they went about it.
Yeah, because you'd have to tackle it differently in different mediums.
Yes.
Whereas here, they can make Miles look kind of fluid, but they just chop it up by doing the frames per second thing. Whereas in a live action thing, they would just make him maybe stumble physically. Yes. He misses the rope and he falls or something, and that, whatever, I don't know. And that would be the way of going about it, to broach that, just because you literally can't do that with live action.
Yeah.
As of yet.
And again,
you know?
Spider-Verse wasn't even on people's radar. Like, Sony legit had the mindset that you said and that I pointed out, where it was more of an experimental medium, where it was, hey, best case is pretty much what happened. They made $1 billion. They have sequels. They have all this other stuff going on.
The new gold standard for Spider-Man movies. You know? But
the new gold standard for animation, not for Spider-Man movies, but definitely for animation. We can concede there.
Yeah.
Some fantastic animation.
That for sure.
I will definitely agree with you there, but not for Spider-Man movies. Two different fields. Gonna stick with that no matter what we go here. We're conceding points, but not all of them. But I forgot what I was saying now. I do this a couple of times.
Well, because they said that you said best case scenario, it's this.
Yeah, and worst case, they brushed it off.
What happened. Yeah.
They brushed it off like, okay, people didn't go watch that, but they're not going to remember it in a couple of years. Why? Because it wasn't a live action adaptation that people are going to bash on stuff like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man 2. Nah, it's an animated film. At most, people are going to go, oh, so they tried doing a little kid movie for Spider-Man and it didn't work out.
I will absolutely give you that. When there's a bad animated movie, it is so easy to forget about it. The Good Dinosaur, Turbo, bad animated
Turbo
movies.
was good. I like Turbo.
But you know,
we're gonna have to have a debate on that.
But it's easy to brush bad animated movies under the rug.
Yes.
You forget about things like there's like 3 Cinderella sequels. Like,
what? I knew there was one.
They were like straight to video, all of them. And
for real?
Like,
I'm gonna look this up. Keep talking.
And
I'm gonna look this up.
and when there's bad animated movies, and even good animated movies often get the shaft in general, where live action does not. And I think that that's another thing too, is that it's like societally, these things are just a little bit more in the forefront. A lot of people, if you ask them, hey, have you ever seen the animated full feature-length animated Star Wars movie, the Star Wars, the Clone Wars? Most people will probably go, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They'll say, do you mean that series that was on Cartoon Network? And I'll go, no, this is the movie that started that. They'll go, there was a movie that started that?
Yeah.
And that's part of it, is because these things get kind of brushed aside even when they're really good. And I think that's part of the problem, is that a lot of society does look at them as
they don't take them serious.
Lesser than, or jokes.
Which they're not.
For the bad ones and the good ones. And I think that that's problematic. And I'm not saying this is you at all. I'm saying this is just like
Oh, no.
In general, people just kind of take it as it's its own medium. They're dumb movies for kids, so who cares? And that's not what animation is, and almost never has been, but certainly is not currently. The first full feature-length animated movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, was a laughingstock, and when it was being produced, people thought Disney was crazy. You can't do that. You can't make a cartoon into a full-length movie. Cartoons are 7-minute shorts that people watch before the real movie in theaters. Cartoons are Popeye for 7 minutes. You can't make a full movie, and he did it, and he changed the game.
Completely.
You know? But they still don't get fully acknowledged. That's why they have their own categories. That's why when you say I like animated shows, people immediately think you're like a moron who doesn't watch higher class TV.
Yeah.
You know, or higher class movies or whatever. Well, and that's not fair. And as such, that's why these things get blown under the rug. Why people don't acknowledge Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse as a whole on the same level, because the live action stuff has more staying power.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. But that's why I will agree that me and you do agree. As sense, though, animation deserves its own stuff. Animated comedy, animated drama, all this, so that it can be on par in its own field. It can be compared within its own field. Animated movies can finally be compared to each other without being looped together, just like live action movies are compared all together. Because what's happening in a lot of people's minds right now, if we were to flip the scenario, is what some people do with animation that we agree on, where it's like, if you just say, oh, you watch animation, okay, whatever, and it's like there's such broad stuff from Attack on Titan to Dora the Explorer to SpongeBob to Rick and Morty to all this other stuff to Archer, you don't know, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like if someone was just like, oh, you watch live action movies. Okay, so do you watch like the Saw franchise? Do you watch like Adam Sandler movies? Do you watch like Where the Heart Is? Like
that's exactly
So it's like
exactly. When you put them all under one umbrella, it's not fair on either side.
Exactly. So you need to give specifications, but at the end of the day, they still have their own lane. But that's why I say it deserves its own lane, because it's not demeaning it by saying I don't think they're comparable. If anything, it's more of a positive, saying, hey, don't make me compare this, because if it compares, then it's a mid-tier. This is not a mid-tier movie. This is a high-tier movie, but it's in its own lane. It's in its own category. That's my argument.
And I think it's a good argument. I gotta say, I think it's a good argument. You have not swayed me, because I still just think they're Spider-Man movies, and as such, we should compare them. And in that regard, I still think they can be compared in the same way that I think you can and should compare the Justice League live action to cartoon Justice League, to cartoon Superman movies.
So do you think you could compare the Dark Knight to the Killing Joke?
I probably couldn't. I'll admit, like, once again, boy, oh boy,
that's one you should check.
Boy, oh boy, I'm not a DC fan, and I have never seen The Killing Joke.
Well, DC animated is amazing.
I feel like I would like it. I've heard good things. That's another thing.
DC sucks at live action. They're amazing in animation because they're two different fields.
They have different people in charge of it.
No, they don't.
How are they doing so well on animation?
I don't know.
Like, what are they doing?
I don't think they have different.
Well, why do they have their head in the sand for these live action things? But what if we just CGI his mustache out? Like, to be fair, you don't have that problem in cartoons, because Henry Cavill could just record his lines whether he has a mustache or not.
Yeah, Henry Cavill could have recorded his bathrobe for all he cares, man. But that's why, at the end of the day, like, I just think they're in their own lanes, and I think that if anything, they all deserve equal attention. We could agree on that.
Yeah,
they deserve equal attention, but I feel they're in their own stuff. You know, we're comparing Raimi to Garfield to Holland. I could do that all day. And eventually, maybe with No Way Home, we might be able to go back and compare No Way Home to Spider-Verse, because we could go, okay, they're still different mediums, but let's take away the medium and everything else. Let's just go storyline, but that's still technically different. We're saying, hey, let's compare the story of the two movies versus let's compare the two movies. That's different, because you're having to remove everything else besides that. So I'm going to acknowledge that too. That's why I concede half points.
Yeah.
But I don't want to ramble too long, because I've made pretty much all my points. I'm sorry the Mountain Dew one got a little combobulated. It was way better in my head on everything. But at the end of the day, I did get you on that too, where it's like, okay, what do you think that the other flavors are when you compare 1, 2, 3? I did get you there. You gotta admit that. I only say this because we've had this conversation like 12 times off mic, so I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. It made sense in our heads, but to bring it to here to people who've never heard it, it's hard to broach that, you know.
Yeah.
But that being said, that's what we think. We definitely want to know what you think.
Everybody.
If you have a thought on this, if you see us in person, let us know. But if you comment this somewhere, let us know what you think of this stuff, because I want to know.
Oh, I don't know.
I've got somebody on my side. Our good friend Jake agrees with me.
But I haven't really asked many people.
But I want to bring up this conversation with some more people and just see what they think of it in whatever avenue. If Spider-Man isn't the best example right now, what about the Star Wars, the Clone Wars? What about DC's animated versus live action? What about Killing Joke versus the Joker 2019 movie? Or whatever, or Killing Joke versus The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight.
You know what? How do they hold up against each other? I want to have that conversation with some people and see what they think. That good Harley Quinn animated series that I haven't seen, but I've heard is really good, versus the DCEU's Harley Quinn. How do those
Harley
hold
Quinn?
up?
Which Harley Quinn? Will, I don't know which DCEU Harley Quinn movie you're talking about. I need the full.
Oh,
title,
you're talking about the Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn.
Oh, that Harley Quinn. Okay.
But,
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to be so vague.
Okay.
You know, it's fair enough. It's an easy mistake.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many Harley Quinn films out there. That's not a bash on Harley Quinn. I love Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie is the Harley Quinn. Same as Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, and Jake Johnson as Spider-Man. Like, Margot Robbie is Harley Quinn. No, but she has done that so well, and this is a weird place to sing this praise, but she just does really good in that role, and I just think she's really, really good in there. Honestly,
does amazing, dude.
But yeah, if you like the podcast, please like it on Apple Music. Apparently, that kind of helps, or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called. I don't know. I'm an Android user, but Apple. But go like it on Apple Podcasts. That helps out the algorithm. You can of course find us at Jordan J and Buddies on Instagram. That's where we'll post updates about upcoming podcasts and whatever other kind of stuff. Brandon, you got anything to plug on here?
First question: can you rate on Spotify? I think you can rate 5 stars on Spotify too.
I think you can.
If
that's the case,
do that too.
Do
if
it.
That's the case, just anywhere you listen to podcasts, if it gives a rating system, do it. It helps Jordan out. It helps Will out. I like being on this podcast from time to time. Keep it going. But I have my Instagram, Canvabutter, CANVABUTTER. Always giving art, always posting food that's not for sale. But art is.
The food is not for sale. The art is, and I believe. Do you do commissions?
Yeah, I do commissions. I do pre-made art. I have all sorts of stuff. I mean, I'll be honest too when I can make stuff. I'll be honest when I can't make stuff. You just gotta hit me up and see what's good.
Yeah, so I would say definitely look into that. And that's it for the main podcast. We'll start the outro though real quick.
Bruh, there is multiple Cinderella movies. There's Cinderella 3, A Twisted Time.
What is that? I knew it was a time travel one.
It's a time travel one. Cinderella time travel. What is this? Well, Cinderella did it before all of this other stuff.
Cinderella walks so Back to the Future could run.
Cinderella walks so Spider-Man into the multiverse could run. That's my piece. Laters.
I guess that was the outro.